Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. All right, here we are. Welcome to our Tuesday Night Podcast.
I have Todd beside me tonight.
It's like the North Pole here at the office. Nice and cold,
Very
freezing
dramatic.
out. It's freezing in here.
I think it's refreshing. I think it feels awesome, and we're so excited it's Tuesday.
I work with polar bears.
Oh, goodness. Hope you all are having a great start to your week.
We're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to talk about some strategies, buyer strategies, and we'll trickle in some seller strategies too. We represent both buyers and sellers. I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a broker here at Sachs Realty. We're a Maryland real estate brokerage. If you guys haven't tuned in before, welcome to our show. We're going to talk about some things tonight and give you some professional advice, but I want to caution you guys that what we know here is Maryland law. And though a lot of strategies will work in your state, always check with your state laws and your contracts, because I know some of the state different nuances of some of the contracts in other states, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, but I don't know a whole lot about many of the states, but I can give you some good negotiating strategies because that's what we do best here at Sachs Realty.
Providing value is what, we pride ourselves on. And we also love hearing from you guys too. When you kind of tell us what's going on in your area, what you're seeing, sometimes you even update us on transactions that you're in the middle of. And we love to hear about that too. So please feel free. I see comments and questions coming in. So let us know what's going on.
Tell everybody who you are.
Oh, I'm Melissa Levy, everyone. We are coming up on year 5 for me being here. We're weeks away from that, so I can't believe it. But I am Todd's assistant, but I do so many other things here at Sachs Realty as well, podcasting being one of them with you guys on Tuesday night. But it's been quite a ride, and we're going to segue right in because we've had a major production in preparing for our podcast studio out back today.
Oh man, it's been a busy week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do want to say though, you're licensed.
I
So
am.
You have a real estate
I
license.
am licensed, yes.
Which is critical
It
because
is.
you can't really, unlicensed people at a brokerage, they can't really have conversations with clients and certain things they can't say. So with Melissa having her license, she is able to talk to our clients and about confidential information. So, which is very, very nice. It's critical. But we're going to talk about agent selection. Why you need the right agent. We're going to kind of dive into that probably the most tonight because I think, single-handedly, one of the biggest issues that we see with deals is because of agents, not representing their clients the best. We're not going to bash specific agents and not bash agents at all. But what we want to do is educate you because a lot of people just make agent selection decisions based on being a family member or a friend. And sometimes that is not the best. And I'm going to go over a scenario of why. We will talk about that. But yeah, so let's talk about, so if we could just do some housekeeping for those of you guys, for our audience that have really hung out with us on Tuesday nights, some of you every Tuesday night. We are really excited. We've been working on a real podcast studio where we can bring you, great effects, great audio, a real good experience. And we're hoping that we bring our guests into our studio so we can really get deep and some deep interviews, good information, good training. This is the studio here. We just had our carpet installed today, which is exciting. And the table in the center studio, there's 3 studios. The center studio will be where we'll do our Tuesday night podcast once we get it all set up. It does still have a long way to go, but it's come a long way too. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And, we'll be updating you and showing you little videos and pictures of the progress, but it's come along amazingly, especially since just the beginning of this year. So we're super excited about it.
What else? Some other housekeeping things.
Some other housekeeping things. Oh, Todd and Joe are traveling next week, and we're really excited. I know we've talked about it previously, but we have our new high-low series that we're doing. We are going to be traveling to different parts of our nation. The first stop is going down to Boynton Beach, Florida, and Todd is going to be kind of showing you what you can get for your money in these specific areas. And we're going to be looking at either high-end and then what you can get single-family home on the low end as well.
I know and then we're heading to Boca.
And heading to Boca after that, yeah.
And we're going to podcast with John.
Yeah,
at
John
his
Williams.
new studio.
Yeah.
We've had him on our show a couple times, and we're excited to be on his show.
Yes.
And, but we're going to show you what your money can get you in the highest and lowest price brackets for a single family house, detached home is what we really want to do. And, try and stay away from specific things like 55 plus, but what anyone, anyone can get, right, for their highest and lowest amount of money. But it's not easy getting in some of these places, and we're really fortunate because if it was a year ago, these houses would be gone before we boarded the plane.
For sure.
They would be under contract, but now they're sitting on the market longer everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere that we're looking to go, we're seeing houses sitting on the market longer, and upward some 30, 45 days. And then, but there is a house in Boca we really wanted to get in to show you. It was 55.5 million?
52.5 million. Yeah.
Jeez.
I know. I'm still trying. I'm not going to take no for an answer. So we need a little in on that. But yeah, I really can't wait to see the footage. These homes are beautiful down there. So it's going to be fun to have you and Joe go.
Definitely. And then finally, let's just talk about our podcast today, our recording. That was kind of cool.
So Todd podcasted today with Chris Crone, which was very exciting. Very exciting that Chris gave us some of his time today. And we're very thankful for that. And I can't wait to see the show.
Yeah, if you guys don't know who he is, you can check him out. He's actually been one of my mentors for probably the last decade. I'm older than Chris, and and I've been in the business longer. I think just because I'm older than him, and I started back in 1989 in construction and swinging a hammer. But Chris is he's amazing. He's very charismatic. He's got a lot going on, but he really has taught me a lot about just being a business person, right? And I look to him a lot for just positive energy and things like that. So it was really cool that we were able to podcast with him today. We're going to bring that to you probably, Saturday, I hope. We'll have that video out. Yeah. And you guys have to check it out.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks for letting us catch you up.
Yes, thank you.
Good things happening.
All good things. So
let's talk. Let's talk, guys. Let's get some comments going. I'd like to know what you want to know about whether it's your agent, a transaction. Maybe you're in the middle of something right now. I spoke with someone who is in Atlanta that has their house had been on the market for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, and they had 2 offers. Now they've received 3 in the last couple days, and I was able to kind of help through the negotiation of that because their agent wasn't experienced to what I like to see in handling those multiple offer situations and how to kind of be careful. And, and that's more on the selling side. The big thing was because it was only a couple offers and they were really kind of, close and underpriced from what the list price was. This is a seller I was speaking with. We were kind of going over strategies, how to get those prices up, but not killing the entire deal. Because here's what's happened in the last couple of years is that buyers are tired of multiple bid situations. And, you can, if you're a seller, and we'll just say this while we're talking about it, if you're a seller, you have to be very, very, very careful because the agent, a lot of times, just once, if you get, let's say your house is on the market for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you have 2 offers that come in. A lot of times what the agent wants to do in that scenario is, say, hey, look, let's go back to both of those offers and say you're in a multiple bid situation, put your highest and best foot forward and resubmit by noon tomorrow. The risk of that, because the buyers, first of all, it's always the risk of that, even when there was 20 offers. But the difference is that was 20 offers then, and now it's 2. So if you lose the 2, you're done, right? And you've lost out big time. Now you're trying to come back to them like, wait a minute. Oh, come on, don't back out, right? You've already shot it, right? So what the seller needs to do now when they have a multiple offer, 2 bids, and chances are one's better than the other, but they're both not what you want maybe. What you have to do is actually you have to pick your pony, pick your horse, decide which one you're going to start negotiating with, right? And let the other one kind of sit it out for a little bit of time, right? So you pick one. The agent has to call that other agent on the phone and say, hey, look, nothing in writing, just talking and saying, look, you guys are taking a shot. You guys are, this or that or whatever. We like your offer, but we need it to be more. Can you get your buyer up? Things like that, right? And it actually worked out. And by the second offer, sitting and waiting for a couple hours and they were actually getting anxious and actually ponied up more too, right? Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, you have to be really careful, because if you blow these deals now, guys, if you're a seller and you're listening, you blow these deals, you could be sitting on the market.
Yeah, this is where it comes so crucial into having good, representation, because it's so easy it's an emotionally charged transaction. We know this, we've talked about it before. And this is where you really have to be guided and put the brakes on, calm down, look at what's coming in and go through it methodically with your agent.
Yeah, and that's the scary part. So what you just said, yes, is true. You want to ask your agent a lot of questions, but you should not be calling the shots, because you're emotional.
Yeah.
So whether you're a buyer or a seller, you really need to make sure that you have the professional that is going to direct you and kind of guide you through the emotional side of it, because that's where this is the whole mess that has happened with, the multiple bids and, leaving the contingencies out of the contract and things like that. These are all emotion-based responses or reactions that, end up where you end up losing, right? You get more emotional, you get caught up in the deal. So, a good agent is going to really guide you through that. I'm going to listen to your concerns and what you think I should do, and then I'm going to suggest what I should do. And ultimately, the buyers and sellers make the decisions. I work for my clients, but most of the time they do listen and take my advice. But anyway, let's take a couple questions. And guys, I want to hear from you tonight. I want your comments and questions. And we'll see if we can answer some questions that you have, maybe debunk some things, and talk about it.
This one comes up. I see this. I hear it. We've had calls into the office asking this same question, because people have not been talking with an agent yet. And they're should we just communicate with the listing agent for the property? So a simple man has a question. When purchasing a home, is it beneficial to shop without a realtor and use the listing agent to get favorable treatment?
No, I don't even like it in states that are allowed for dual agency. Look, I think that, and this is my opinion, but I think dual agency should not be allowed. I mean, it's not allowed here in Maryland. I can be a dual agent as a broker, but I have to have an agent for the buyer and an agent for the seller, and there has to be confidentiality. And me as a broker, I have to keep my fiduciary to both sides. That is almost impossible. And I know agents out there are going to be like, "Oh, that's not true." How do you represent both the buyer and seller? I'll give you an example. I have a listing. And, I have a buyer that's coming to me, and they want me to assist. I can't give professional opinion. In Maryland, we call the one that we're the fiduciary is the client, and the unrepresented party is called the customer. And, you still have to, you can't lie. You have to give care, timeliness. You have to disclose material facts, which are things that would be either physically or financially harmful if they, didn't know about it and they moved in and found out later. So these are things that I, as even representing my client, have to disclose to an unrepresented side, even a represented side if they have another agent. But how can I be objective? How can I be objective for my client when, maybe I would, in that situation, I wouldn't be so friendly to other agents because I knew I would be double dipping the commission. It's human nature. You get the agents that say, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't look at it that way. Well, if you wouldn't look at it that way, give them up. If you wouldn't look at them that way, give them up. If the money doesn't mean anything to you, give them up. Make them get another agent. Call somebody in your office and say, look, I have buyers. I can't represent both of these people. And guys, even if the law says that you can, how can you? It seems almost impossible to me, right? And what's going to happen is you're going to end up disappointing. It's like grabbing a dog by both ears. You're going to get bit.
That's
right?
Quite a visual.
It's right. Seriously.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So getting back to the question, no, I think that, and here's what a lot of people do. They, of course, you're shopping on Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, whatever, wherever you're getting your alerts. Back in the day, before we had all of these platforms, you were really dependent upon your agent. So a lot of people, especially the younger generation, they don't like to engage until they actually have to with human interaction. So they'll sit in their house on their laptops 2:00 in the morning and search for homes. But guys, a lot of people don't realize that when you're on these other platforms and you're contacting an agent, you're going to get hammered with calls because they sell those leads. So you think you're calling the listing agent. They have to show who the listing agent is in the advertising, but they kind of bury it sometimes to where you see other agents like a preferred agent. And a lot of people think that that's the listing agent. They'll call them up and it's not. They're just paying for leads, paying for you, right? So if you're going to do your research online, that's fine. Look at the pictures, look at the area, make sure it's where you want to be, do all your due diligence. But you need you need a great agent to represent you, and you need to interview for that. And we'll talk about that a little bit.
And talking about the interviewing, we've had calls into the office that people felt they were on such a crunch, such a timeline that they didn't have the opportunity to interview. And so they just kind of were like looking online, doing a quick Google search, and because they needed to get that offer in really bad and really fast.
And then they signed buyer agency agreements that they couldn't get out of.
And then they're stuck.
Yeah. Here we have a cancellation here in Maryland, where we signed, you have to have buyer agency in Maryland. We're one of those goofy states where you have to be represented. You have to sign an agency agreement in order to have confidentiality. And, it's kind of weird because the law says that we have to do that upon our first interaction with you, at least offer it up, one of two forms. We either have to give you a form that says that I work for the seller. If you don't want to sign a contract with me, then it's a form that you don't have to sign. We ask you to sign it, but if you refuse to sign it, we can self-certify that we gave it to you. That basically says, don't tell me anything confidential, even though I'm showing this house to you, because even though I don't know the seller, I'm a sub-agent to the seller, right? It's called whom the agent represents here in Maryland.
Right.
If you sign a buyer agency agreement, then that means that I work for you. I represent you, right? In a fiduciary agreement, we have cancellation terms in, where both parties can cancel because sometimes we don't, we get into a situation where we're like, we can't make you happy or whatever, and we want to cancel it. But there are some states that don't have it. Tennessee's one of them. And, I was looking over an agency agreement for someone in Tennessee, and I actually called the agent. We did a three-way conversation. I said, look, I'm looking at your buyer agency agreement, and there's no termination clause in here. Like, how does somebody get out? She's like, oh, well, we just, even though it's not written, if somebody doesn't want to work with me, I just let them out. And I'm thinking, you're right. I wouldn't sign that, right? You write in, and here's what I want to tell you guys, okay? The associations, most of the associations, when you are a realtor, right? Not realtor, it's not a 3-syllable word, it's 2-syllable, realtor, okay? A lot of agents don't even realize that, but for the record. But when you're a realtor, you subscribe, you are a member of the National Association of Realtors, and then you are in a state association of realtors, and then you are part of a local board of realtors. What that does for people, and why people say, well, why would I be a realtor? Why do I want to hire a realtor? Because as part of our dues and our fees, we get to use contracts that are already prepared. And they're very friendly for both sides. They're very, kind of neutral, gives everybody a fair shake. But that prevents you, the buyer or seller, from going out and hiring an attorney. And so as part of our association dues, we get access to these different contracts. But let me tell you something. The contract is between the buyer and the seller, or the buyer and the seller and the broker, not even the agent, but the broker of record, okay? Everything is negotiable, guys. And if it's not, find somebody else. So when you're looking at a form that doesn't have a termination clause, tell them you want one, or you're not going to sign it. If they want your business, they'll go to their broker and they'll say, look, I have this buyer or this seller, and this agreement doesn't have a termination clause, and they want to give us their business or give us the opportunity, but they want it out if things don't go the way they should. If they don't give it to you, then you decide what you want to do. But if I'm signing a contract with somebody and I don't know who they are, if I don't like the situation or relationship, I want out. And if I can't have it, you're not getting my business.
Let's talk about how, it was so difficult these past 2 years, putting all these buyers, putting all these offers in and getting outbid constantly. Do the agents get frustrated? Robert had a good question here. My realtor and I looked at about 15 properties this spring. On the 15 homes I placed offers on 2 properties, both outbid. Do realtors experience client frustration? At what point does a realtor get frustrated enough to walk away from a client whom is trying to get fair market price?
Yeah, what's called fatigue.
Yeah.
So it's agent fatigue, just like it's buyer fatigue and seller fatigue. And, anytime you're disappointed or you feel like you can't satisfy somebody, then, of course, everybody goes through it. I've been through it myself. I mean, I get frustrated. It doesn't mean that we don't, hang in there, or I find a way to take out my frustration other than on my client. In fact, I just had a seller client, great seller. We worked together and very successful transaction. It was stressful. And, I was very good at keeping things on track until the very end. And, I started to show a little bit of frustration, and my seller said, you've been talking me off the shelf, and I think I need to talk you off the shelf. But it was cool. I mean, it was a great scenario. It was a great situation, but it was just things that were out of my control. And it just got crazy. In the end, it just turned into this, just very difficult, the personalities are starting to clash. But fortunately, they're not all like that. But what you're talking about here is going and seeing all these properties and writing offers, of course, very frustrating. But that's what we do. And when a lot of people say, well, you guys don't do anything for your money, that's the farthest from the truth. You have no idea. If you're saying that, you're completely ignorant to the fact of what is entailing, what this business entails. And you know what? Why you're saying that is because you hired the wrong agent. That's why you're hurt. Your agent hurt, right? Because you hired the wrong. It's your fault. You're the one that hired. You have to own that. If I'm an employer and I hire the wrong employee, it's whose fault is it? It's my fault, right? That's the same in this situation. Now, if it's a situation where you guys just can't work together, then you have to have a conversation about it. But, it all comes down to hiring the right agent. And if you did, that's why the agents earn what they earn, right? Because it's not just show somebody a house and it's over. There are strategies, there's negotiations, right? We may lock in on a price, but my strategy is from that point on, I'm going to, try and negotiate everything I can for my client, right? But that's why people are so frustrated with agents, because there's so many out there that are, they're part-time, not knocking you guys. If you're dual career agent, maybe you do a great job, right? Maybe you're very, we had an agent that her dad had a business, and she worked for him, and also was an agent, but she had flexibility. She could leave at 2:00 and go show a house, 10:30 in the morning, go show a house. It was her father. She worked hard for him, but she also was building her business. And, so there are scenarios where your agent can be dual career and deliver a good service. But, if they're locked down for 8 or 10 hours a day where they're not allowed to have their phone, and, they can't reach you, you have to decide, is that somebody that you want in the middle of a negotiation, in the middle of a transaction, in the middle of, putting in offers and looking at properties? Can you tolerate that? And you may lose deals because of it. So if the agent's showing you 15 houses, you got to first identify, were they the right houses, and whose fault was it that you didn't get them? Or, were they all bad or whatever? So, there's a lot that kind of goes into that.
There is. And I think, as with anything, you cannot, you're hiring the agent. You can't hire them based on potential. You have to hire them on their track record, what you're seeing, the actions that they're delivering, reviews in themselves. I think that speaks volumes, and really, and interviewing them, taking the time to interview them. And it's work. This is a huge amount of money, and it just can't be because it's hard finding a good agent. It takes, initiative and doing your homework, and I think that some people just are overwhelmed with that, and so they're like, okay, we're just going to go with this agent. And
and the agent also has to, and we can talk about the number one, buyers primarily. So a seller, there's two different scenarios here. We'll just talk about them for a second. Mm-hmm. There's a seller, right, and a buyer. The seller, believe it or not, cares more about the agent than the buyer. And this is a problem, right? So we're in educating you guys. It should be as equally important as a buyer to make sure you're hiring the right agent, interviewing, as you do the seller. And let me explain why. The reason is historically, okay, when I go into a listing, they're either calling me because I'm the area expert, or they want to get another opinion of the area expert. So what happens is, an agent, when you see signs for the agent, like, oh, that agent sells a lot in the neighborhood, the reason is because they're the neighborhood expert. So they know what they can get for your house. They know what kind of house you have versus what they've sold in the last 15 houses. They know the area, they know who's coming in, they know why. Right. So, and their strategies a lot of times are better than someone who's 45 minutes away, right, for your listing. So they may interview you because you're their friend, but they're also going to be interviewing that area expert. And it's easier for them to justify to you as their friend to say, well, unfortunately, we didn't select you because in this case, we wanted to go with the area expert, right? So that's an easier scenario for a seller, and it's their money. Right? They want the most amount of money, so they want the one that's going to be able to, that they feel will provide them with that. The buyer, they don't care. They look at it as, well, I'm not paying the buyer, the agent, the listing brokerage is paying the commission, and, maybe there's a flat fee, maybe there's administrative fee, whatever. But, the buyer's really not coming out of pocket. Now, there's a case going on right now with the Department of Justice has been involved, and they're kind of going over, is the buyer really paying? That's the scenario where they're saying, is the buyer essentially paying even though they don't think that they are? Because if they didn't have their buyer agent, could they get a better price on the house? This is the argument from the attorneys. And guys, if this wins, you as buyers, you're screwed. Because what'll happen is it'll make it impossible for buyer agency. In my opinion, it's going to make it impossible because you're going to have to pay for your own agent out of pocket, right? And most people barely have enough to put money down on their house and pay closing costs and make repairs, let alone now come out of pocket. So if this actually is successful, it will change the way real estate transactions happen completely. And in my opinion, it's going to hurt buyers and not give them the representation. So the way it works is in the brokerage agreement, it's the listing agreement, at least with us. We get paid a listing commission from our seller, and then we cooperate. It's called cooperate with a buyer's agent. So the buyer's not actually coming out of pocket. That's what's in question right now. And it'd be very interesting. We're watching it very closely. But the situation is, so because the buyers aren't directly writing checks, they're just like, can you show me this house? Like, all you really have to do is get me in, right? I mean, just get me in the house, get me in, show me the house. And so they don't have the right mindset starting out. They're all right off the bat thinking, well, my friend, or my relative, can you drive me around and show me these houses? But guys, where the rubber meets the road is in the negotiations. A good agent is going to be charismatic, and I know I come across, you guys, some people say, I say too much. I shouldn't say enough. I don't say, whatever. Everybody has an opinion, right? But when it comes down to me representing my client, I think I'm pretty good at this. In fact, I know I am, right? So we have to reach across the aisle, if you will, in a very charismatic way, and show the other side that you're very professional, and we're going to be able to get this done together. We're going to work together. We're going to make it, try and make everybody happy in the deal. That's job one of the agent, right? Because as we're negotiating, I can't talk to the seller if I'm representing a buyer, if they're represented. I have to go through their agent. So your agent has to have a good personality. They have to be good with people. They have to have, good a good reputation in their amongst their peers. And, so if you get somebody who's nasty, we got somebody today who's nasty. We're in negotiations. The agent on the other side is a complete jerk about it, right? It's like, wait a minute, dude, why are you being like this? How are you representing your client? They want to talk for their client. Oh, I would never, they're not going to take that. Wait a minute. This is my favorite saying. Could you send me that in writing? They're not going to do it. Can you send me that in writing? They're not going to do this. My client's asking this or that. I'm not even going to present it. Could you send it to me in writing? Right? That's fine. I mean, if you're speaking on the behalf of your client, but we've got to get somebody. You've got two agents that are working the deal, right? So that's another reason, very, very critical in making sure that you're working with a very good agent. And people, they say this kind of thing. Well, somebody has to start somewhere, right? It's like the surgeon, right? Do you want them operating on you? It's their first surgery. It's like going to get your blood drawn. And last time I went in to get my blood taken for my physical, I'm sitting in a chair and the nurse that's getting ready to take my blood is physically shaking. I'm like, either something's up here. Why are you shaking? I'm like, are you nervous? And she was like, a little bit. And I'm like, okay, are you new? And she's like, I am. I'm like, well, when did you start? She's like, last week. I'm thinking to myself, oh, can I get somebody else? Right? So what happens, man? She ended up blowing out my, whatever. Well, I don't want, some of you fainted. I don't want to, look. My point is, everybody does have to start out, right? Everyone starts out, but they should be working very closely with their manager. There should be a team member that maybe they're on a team or maybe they're being mentored. Maybe the broker or manager is involved. So you have to know that if you have a new agent and they seem competent, seem good, I mean, go for it. But make sure that they have a good, strong team behind them to give them advice and step in, and quite honestly, when it needs to be, when they need it.
Yeah. Travis, thank you so much for your super chat.
You got it right.
I got it right today. Thank you for consistently great podcast, and thank you so much for always tuning in.
Thanks, Travis. We appreciate you, man.
do.
I know we were just kind of going back, having some conversation together this morning. So we appreciate you. We know you're out there. You're killing it, man. You're crushing it. You're giving great content. If you guys don't know who Travis is, cruise on over to his YouTube channel and show him some love.
Yeah,
we appreciate
show him some
you.
love,
Thank
for
you
sure.
so much, Travis.
Thank you.
A great support.
And Charlton, I do want to get back to this. If you could just be a little bit more clear. It says, question, does the lender bank have to approve this, or can it be a separate agreement? If you could just chat some additional info, and then we'll be sure to get to that question for you. And then we have one here from Miroslava. How do you know, or what do you need to know in order to feel comfortable asking for seller to contribute closing costs? I'm looking in the Houston market.
Yeah, seller contribution is something that we just we're starting to see again, because over the last several years, if you're asking for the seller for anything, the answer was no, because there was so much cash out there, in deals, and with no contingencies. And this is one of the reasons why FHA and VA loans were sellers were shying away from them. Not so much because asking for contributions, but they just didn't want to fix anything either, right? But when you're, a lot of it has to do with, there's confidentiality. So I'll start off by saying that agents owe their client confidentiality. That's both the buyer and the seller. So really, you can't, if you're a listing agent, you can't give the motivation of why somebody is selling. It happens all the freaking time, right? I mean, it's not illegal for me to ask questions, right? So I'm going to ask as many questions as I can from my client, but it may be illegal or a breach of fiduciary for the agent to tell you. But when you're asking for any kind of concessions, and seller contribution is certainly a concession, you have to find out what is going on. Hey, this is what I have. I have this buyer, and is your seller open to this? What does your seller want? What are they thinking, and things like that? Because guys, price isn't always everything, right? Maybe it's a different term that's important to them. Maybe they want to move, they want a 90-day close, not a 30-day close, where somebody's coming in, they're like, oh, I'm going to get this deal because we could settle in 2 weeks. The seller may not want to settle in 2 weeks. You may not get that deal because of that. So you can't just have a blanket across the strategy across the board and say, this is how I'm going to get it. But seller contribution, sure, it's huge. You're paying for it one way or another. So it's all in, how you want to cook the books, right? So, if you need the cash to close because you don't have cash, I would be questioning whether you should be buying anyway. If you have the cash to close, but you want to just keep it as a cushion and you want to use the seller contribution so you don't have to use as much cash, that's a great strategy. But usually, you get one or the other. You get the great price or a discounted price, or you get the, full price or whatever. And, a lot of times, and then you're 4% or 6%, as long as it goes towards your closing costs, as long as your closing costs are going to cost that much. But the important thing here is a lot of agents will tell you, well, we need the money. We're going to bump the price, and then we're going to come in with seller contribution, and you think that that's going to make your seller excited and take your offer. The problem is you're going to need an appraisal. And the appraisers know that you're bumping the price because they're looking at the contract and they know what the listing price is. So, if you have a house that's $300,000, let's just say, and you say, hey, I want to get $9,000 back, 3%, and you say, but I'm going to give you 310 and I want 3% back. That could backfire on you because the good listing agent's going to say, well, we shouldn't take this deal because it's not going to appraise it's doubtful to appraise for 310. We're at the top, whatever. So let's take this other deal, right? That maybe isn't as much, but we know it's going to be smooth sailing, right? So one of the things it can be a flag to a seller when you need cash to close. The first thing they may be thinking is, do we have a weak, a financially weak buyer, and is it a risk, right, in a multiple offer situation? Now, if the property's been on the market for 6 months and, there's no activity and your agent's communicating, then, seller contribution could be a good way to go.
Yep. Perfectly said. Absolutely. Let me get to another question here. Okay, so Charlton did clarify. I want to get back.
Super chat there.
Oh, yeah. We've got Sean D.
All right.
Super sticker.
Super sticker.
Thank you for the super sticker.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Yeah, no comment, no question that you want answered.
Yeah, I know.
We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, okay, back to Charlton's question. So, preliminary, he asked, question, does the lender bank have to approve this or can it be a separate agreement? Followed up with the information like if a zoning issue with an agreement clause like on mixed use.
Okay, so let's try and explain that again. So, we've got a zoning issue.
Mm-hmm.
With an agreement clause. I'm not really sure what that is. It may be state specific, but let's go with it. So like on mixed use. So mixed use property is something that typically is a mix between residential and commercial in some aspect. Perfect example of that is, a building with apartments over top of stores. Could be mixed use.
Right.
So the original question then was, so if we have a zoning issue and a clause, so maybe there's some type of contingency. Mixed use could mean commercial, so now we're getting into different financing. Mm-hmm. And so the original question was what? The
original question, let me go backtrack here for a moment. Does the lender bank have to approve this or can it be a separate agreement? Yeah, so
any contingencies the bank will have to approve. Anytime they're lending money, they're going to want to be part of it and know everything. Transparency is big. When you're dealing with mixed use, a lot of times you're dealing with commercial financing. So it could be based on cash flows. Whether the borrower is actually an owner occupant. So maybe their business is going to be in that building. So then it will be based on the business's financials, how long they've been in business, whether they're making money, and things like that. But yes, so the lender is going to be very involved in something like that. Mm-hmm. And their appetite's different. I mean, different lenders, when we step into the commercial arena, there are lenders that, they like multifamily. There's others that like flex space. Pretty much all of them like owner occupied, purchases, because they're able to tie some kind of a guaranteed, as guaranteed as it gets, income from, because the business has to pay rent somewhere. So chances are if they can get a good guarantor, the business, they're more inclined to lend on the money versus a complete speculation deal where somebody's buying a property hoping to lease it out. A lot of times they won't even take that deal unless you're 50% or more committed on the lease. I've had a situation. I was building retail condominiums, and we had, we were moving right along in the development phase. We had the commitments, and then that was during the 2008 crisis. And one by one, our buyers were backing out and wanting their deposits back because it was all they were entitled to them, because until the bank funded the deal completely, that was part of my contingency. And then as soon as we were about to go, hard on the deal, and then soon as I dropped below 50%, the bank basically backed out. So it was a dead deal. So yeah, your lender is going to be very, you know, very active.
Active.
Yep, in your situation.
How about Vav has a very good question here because she's already gone. Well, the question is pertaining to if there's a certain period of time after closing, if you find something that doesn't work. So she said, if you find that outlets in a home aren't suitable for the washer dryer in the laundry room, can you request a credit within a certain period of time after closing? And if so, do you contact your agent?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like an inspection issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not getting an inspection, so there's a couple things that you guys need to know when you're buying a house and you're getting an inspection. Most inspectors in their contract will not move things out of the way. So when and this is very important, when your agent, when you're looking at a house, if there are couches, furniture, you have a hoarder, there's a lot of stuff. There's a crawl space that's screwed shut. There's a refrigerator in front of a door in the basement. That inspector is not going to move that stuff out of the way. So what your agent has to do ahead of the home inspection is say, look, everything needs to be moved off the walls. We need to get to every outlet. We need to make sure that it's done for the inspection so the inspector has free access to it. If this situation, if it was covered somewhere in your home inspection contract, and it is a contract that you sign, is going to protect them to where if they can't access it, they're not testing it, they're off the hook. You have to make sure that you're prepared for that, right? If the inspector missed it, most of these home inspectors have a policy, a warranty policy to where they would cover it. It's hard to get these inspection companies to stand up and, but you got to fight, right? That's your agent has to fight for that. But if it's after the date, you can kiss that goodbye. I mean, unless you really have a seller that was like, yeah, they feel bad, you could try. I had a situation where buyers moved in, the inspector didn't check the A coil, and where you have your furnace, and then over top of that with your air conditioner unit, there's something in there called an A coil. Well, it's a sealed unit that usually it's taped up with like duct tape, and the furnace itself had been replaced recently, but the A coil was original, like 30 years old. And what happened was the people moved in, they had a home inspection, they checked it, didn't even note the age of the A coil, which they should have said needs further evaluation. The buyer moves in, couldn't understand how to work the Nest thermostat, and was like 68 degrees all the time. And they called the company that they had used before at their other house. They were downsizing. They came in and they said, okay, well, why don't we check out the system? They opened up the A coil and it was disintegrated, and it wasn't operating right, and it was disintegrated. And they went back on the inspection company, and the inspection company was completely off the hook because I think it's terrible. They said that they don't go into these things and look at them. Well, you know what? If the if the inspector is not going to go in this sealed part, which is fine if they're not technicians to do that, but they certainly should have let the buyer know, hey, I just want to let you know, this coil, this unit that sits on top of your furnace is very old, and it was nowhere it was in the report, and that it should have called for further evaluation. So, in situations like this, you're beat, right? So you call the agent on the other side and you go, well, guys, and they said, well, you got an inspection, didn't you? Yeah, well, sorry for your luck. It's very difficult. Now, I will tell you that if you're in a situation where you're going to settlement, are you doing a pre-settlement walkthrough? Because this is where you can catch a lot of problems. I'll give you another example. I had a situation where the seller, I represented the buyer, and the seller had some big dogs. And they were relocating and moving out of state, and the husband moved, and the wife was left behind to wrap everything up. Well, it was quite obvious that before the settlement, sometime between the final inspections and the settlement, that the dogs were allowed to just stay there for an extended period of time on their own, is what it seemed like. Because when we opened up the door to do our pre-settlement walkthrough, the urine smell was so bad in the house. So, we were able to escrow plenty of money to, do whatever we needed to do at that point. And believe me, on settlement day, your sellers are not going to object. They may not like it, but they want their money and they want to close because they've already boxed up and moved out, right? And now you're moving in and you go, whoa, this is not acceptable. It's not the condition it was when we said yes. And we got a problem here. So if you're not, you've got to be very mindful. I've seen agents say, oh, where are the keys? They get to the settlement table. They're like, oh, did you bring the keys? No, I didn't bring the key. Who has the keys? The keys are, I went to the place. The lockbox was gone. We got to do our walkthrough. Well, you didn't tell me you were going to do a walkthrough. We took the lockbox off. We had the keys at settlement. What do you want to do? What I want to do is delay settlement. And I want you to drive back over to the house and give me the keys so we can do a walkthrough, right? You have to do that. Because now in a situation, you're not going to walk around and plug things in your walkthrough, but in a situation where things changed, damage is there during moving, flooring is scratched and you can see photos and it clearly wasn't scratched. They didn't cut the lawn and it's 2 feet tall, right? You cruise over there and you're like, my gosh, man, I gotta pay $1,000 to cut my grass because it doesn't look like they ever cut it. These are things you got to make sure you're doing your pre-settlement walkthrough and tell them you want money. You want escrow for it. Nope, you're not going to sign. You want escrow, put into the account. The title company can handle it for you. They can distribute the funds until we get estimates, and I'm asking for a lot, right? I mean, if I think it's going to cost $1,000, I'm asking $5,000. If I think it's going to be $2,000, I'm asking $10,000. We've done it over and over and over again where we want to make sure that our buyers in this case are covered. And like I said, the seller's going to roll with it.
Mm-hmm. There is a part 2 to this question. So there's just a little bit more information. The electrician is stating a new breaker is needed and outlets will cost $5,500 plus. Can you request credit post-closing within 30 days? So that'd be in Maryland, no.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about other states, whether there's some kind of remorse law or some kind of a. I don't know. I don't think. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to me. I mean, at that point, it would be absolute insanity for a seller.
Yeah.
If you think that they can come back,
settlement, closing is
in
closing.
30 days, whatever goes wrong. Now all of a sudden the seller's on the hook for that. I don't know. That doesn't sound right to me. If I was a seller's agent, I'd be putting a addendum countering that, saying, look, we're crossing through that section and your buyer either acknowledges it or they don't buy the house, or maybe there's a warranty or something that can satisfy the buyer. And home warranties they can be a joke too. So you have to be very careful with home warranties because that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. I mean, there are good warranty companies out there, but you have to ask a lot of questions and make sure that they're covered, because I've seen buyers go through hell, where sewer backups and things.
Not,
and I remember one time I had a buyer that had a baby. Her husband was overseas, and the sewer backed up in the house because somebody working in the house had put a rag, flushed a rag or whatever. They said it was baby wipes, whatever it was. I don't think it was baby wipes, but the bottom line is they made this poor woman, had to move out because, they had to have certain contractors that wasn't available. It was over a holiday disaster. So make sure that if you're getting a home warranty, that you can pick your own contractors. Mm-hmm. That is a big part. Make sure you can pick your own contractors. If you have to use their contractors, find another warranty company, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got Lexi.
Hey, Lexi.
Hey, Lexi. Question. Maryland schools get out pretty early pretty late, mid-June. Typically, when does inventory rise? I'm interested to see after Memorial Day weekend how it goes.
Yep. So, Lexi, is a great question. Typically, history has shown us that prices, the percentage to list price reduces after June, historically. So usually, if you look at, and I think a couple videos ago we had some charts on this, on the Mid-Atlantic area anyway. Bright MLS is who we use.
Yep.
And the Mid-Atlantic region was actually, you could see, now last year it was contrary to that because, we saw big market crash as the interest rates went up, the sales just tanked, right? And now we have inventory issues, which are, there's a greater concern to the inventory issues. But historically, after June, in our area, we start to see the sold to list price gap broaden. Up until in the spring season, and if you think about this, here's what happens historically in the housing market. People don't sell in the wintertime. They get their house ready for a spring sale. The market hits. Then you have graduations. Things start to slow down. You have graduation parties. Then you have summer vacation. Then you have back to school. They're not looking at moving. They're looking at buying backpacks and pencils. Then we go into the holiday season. No one wants to have people coming through their house with a Christmas tree and the presents around it. They're not prepared. Families coming in from out of town. So it is a great seasonality to this industry, that is in the traditional side of real estate. So we know as agents, we're preparing for our spring market. Really come September, October, we're preparing for our spring, doing our marketing, our planning, strategizing, things like that to have a good spring market. If you miss that market as an agent, it really affects your year, right? So that's been our mindset that over, the last several decades that I know, that's been the trend. So yeah, there's a lot to this. The inventory issue is something that's completely different. This is like crazy what's happening right now. It could be a whole bunch of things. Right. I think that people are aging in place, so we don't see, a lot of the older generation going into retirement communities because they're scared to death to do so, right? They want to be at home, they want to age at home, they want to, move their families in, whatever, or however, but we're not seeing them sell. The other thing is the amount of, kind of ghost inventory that's out there. It's a ridiculous amount. All these Airbnbs, the VRBOs, these short-term rentals, craziness. How many of these exist that never did? We basically emptied the hotels and put people in a new type of, vacation rental or short-term rental. So there, until we start to see where a lot of this inventory changes, that's one of the things that's putting so much price pressure on the market. So even if interest rates come down, if the inventory doesn't change, we're still in a situation for many that's unaffordable because we don't have a glut in supply. So we're not seeing any, big reductions that offset the higher interest rates. But I think, and one of the things that Chris Cronin and I talked about today is the current administration, the last thing they want to do in an election year coming up is really rock this boat, this economy. Right. So we're kind of thinking, the more we dive into it, that we think that interest rates, the pressure on the Fed to drop rates is really needed because so many people are struggling. And we just look at, consumer debt. So we have to get outside of the box of just being in the real estate business and realize that people have credit card debt. They have auto loans. They have student debt. And, so a lot of these are interest rate sensitive. So when these interest rates are going up and we're seeing credit card debt, 24, 25%, 29.99%, this is craziness, right? these loans. So until we start seeing interest rates come down for a lot of people, their savings accounts are being drained. So there's a lot of pressure on this administration to back that off and kind of ease some of the lending standards and kind of circulate some more money. Look, businesses are struggling, guys. There are companies right now that can't even fund the inventory on their shelves. They bought a lot of the wrong inventory because they were buying stuff during the, COVID that they oversupplied. So their money's tied up. They have to either blow this inventory out, or they're just paying for it sitting on their shelves. They can't get new inventory because their credit lines have been cut. So the commercial lines of credit have been reduced to almost nothing for these people. And they're looking at their current financial statements going, well, your sales have been off, you're less than this year, your profit margins are down, you're this or that. So they're like, well, we're going to, in that $250,000 credit line, we're going to take back the $50,000. It's not helping them at all. Right. So a lot of people don't realize the impact of interest rates that they have in our economy. So I think the pressure is on the Fed right now to drop it, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see, we'll see inflation kind of hover. I still think it's odd how they come up with their CPI index in the first place. We all know that it's not 5%. I mean, in some cases, we're paying 20%, 30% more. Just went to the grocery store with my mom, and she's looking at groceries over the weekend, and she's like, wow, this is going up. It was $12, and now it's $14.50. And you're like, that's a huge jump in a price of a product. And so I think a lot of people, even if the interest rates drop down, their debt's not just going to be erased. They're not going to be like, oh, good, I'm only paying $400 a month in interest on my credit card instead of $650. I don't think that's going to matter. The fact of the matter is they're in debt, right? So, yeah.
And talking about, just a little side note that I noticed at my local grocery store, a lot of the things you said that we had so much inventory, a lot of the items were expired also, which was just something interesting to me that they're having all this additional inventory that they need to get rid of.
I've noticed that. Yeah, I've noticed that too. I mean, there's a local grocery store to us, and I mean, it's like one of those organic kind of, markets. And, I've seen moldy fruit even and their cheese and things like that.
It just
and
was
expired. Yeah, same thing. My wife was telling me, she was shopping and looking at everything was expired.
Everything's expired. And yet I pull from the back because that's where, all the fresh stuff goes. But anyway, it was just something that I observed. So I would like to.
It just shows you they're struggling.
Yeah.
It just shows you they're struggling.
I know.
I mean, it's, when we look at those things, they're indicators.
Yeah.
They're strong indicators, right? Mm-hmm. It's like it's just like the restaurant business. I remember, I represented, the Restaurant Association back in the, 2008 crisis. And they were meeting with these restaurateurs, and we did a lot of advertising and marketing for the association. But anyway, restaurateurs, they were talking, they had this conference, and they were all big chains and small mom and pops, and they were talking about, you can't let the consumer see that you're struggling. You have to be careful. What happened back then was they just laid people off, and you would be sitting there like eating, your food's cold, and you're looking around like, my drink's empty. Like, they don't have staff. You can't let that happen.
Yeah.
You can limit your hours, you can pull things in, but when people show up, you have to deliver the best for them, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is, that's critical. I think that was a big lesson that they learned. A lot of businesses learned back then, and we saw a lot of businesses go out of business. You have to make sure you're serving your client. You can't serve them expired food, even though it doesn't bother me too much, Melissa.
Oh, I know. Todd eats everything.
Right, I eat everything.
Everything
and
and anything.
We've had some expired things here from time to time in our little.
It's like, it's fine.
In our little basket
it's
of
totally fine.
grub. Right, the agents don't
Our
like.
snacks.
We can tell what agents like what snacks. It's like, you fill up the snack thing and you see what's left over, and I eat that. Right. So Melissa, the other day, I was like eating a bag of chips, and she's like, they expired last month. I'm like, they taste fine. I had to pull them out of the trash can. I'll eat them.
Yeah,
Right.
I am not eating
Yeah,
expired.
I don't have a problem with it.
No,
Yeah.
no. Oh my gosh. Okay, but let's just recap really quick. So Maria P asked, question: what is the Fed going to do at the June meeting?
Yeah, I think they'll just stall. I mean, maybe they'll drop it a little bit, but I don't think we're in for another hike. I think that the narrative is, guys. I mean, we have to figure this out ourselves. But I think the narrative is, they need to back off because we are we're in a recession. Come on. I mean, it's happening, whether you redefine it or whatever. I mean, things are slowing down. There are certain markets out there that, people say it's not, whatever. Things are slowing down. I mean, contractors, are, looking for work, and, if they have any type of size to them, they've slowed down. If they're a 1 or 2 man operation, they may still be booked out, but I mean, it's not hard to keep 2 guys busy. But if you're employing, 25 guys or 30 guys, it's a lot more difficult to keep them busy. And then, I see people all the time. They don't have help on purpose.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay they need all the profit that they can get, and they're out there doing it themselves.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go back to an agent question here. Bear with me. I just saw it here a second ago. It was right here. Miroslava. I've had a realtor for over a year and have not signed an agreement, but I'm unsatisfied with his work as he has caused us to lose a home by not submitting an offer in time. How do I break up with them?
You just do it. I mean, you just say, see you later. Thanks. You haven't been able to help me get it done. And, I think I don't know what state you live in and whether they're breaking the law by not making you sign it. It would be against the law here in Maryland for me to be your agent, or for you to even think that I'm your agent without a written agreement. I mean, we're a statutory state, as a lot of states are. Mm-hmm. There is nothing, at least in our industry, where it's verbal, unless it's a short-term rental. I think that that's a big thing. And I see it all the time. We have open houses, and guys, look, I'm in business. I mean, look, if your agent's not doing their job, I'm right there, right? If they're not, if your agent doesn't have you sign an agreement, and this happens at open houses all the time. You'll come into the open house and I'll say, hey, do you have an agent? A seller would like you to register, they just fill this information out. Promise we won't spam you. The seller just wants to know who's coming through their house and that we verified your information. And one of the questions, and I ask, do you have an agent? And a lot of times they'll say yes, because people are like, look, here's my card. Just anytime you go into an open house, use it as like a crucifix and say, back off, don't bother me. Yes, I've got an agent. Yes, yes, yes. Here's my agent's card or whatever. But the first thing I say is, look, well, where are they? Yeah, I have an agent. Where are they? Oh, well, they're showing, and it's okay. Yeah, but I'm going to ask, right? And I say, did you sign anything? Because I know here in Maryland, if you didn't sign anything with them, you don't have an agent. So I'm asking, have you signed anything, right? It's a fair question. What's wrong with that? Have you signed an agency agreement? Do you have an agent, right? It's on how you ask it. No, I haven't signed anything. Well, I know you don't have an agent, right? So not that I'm going to act on that, but I'm taking, as a broker, I'm taking notes, as to what is going on out there. And then I ask them, who's your agent? And a lot of them are like, they look at each other like, oh, what was it? Tom? What's Tom's last name? Come on, guys. Look.
We know.
Yeah, it's okay. That's no problem. Here's my card. All right. Here's my card. Joe's telling me I'm looking at the wrong camera. Man, you guys are tricking me out here.
It's all good.
See a point, like, you're looking at the wrong camera. It's hot in here now.
It is. It's warm now.
I think Joe turned the air off because I called him a polar bear.
put the heat on for you. It'd make it so
Yeah,
accommodating.
I mean but guys, if you're in a statutory state and you can ask, is it the law that I sign a buyer agency agreement with you? And they say yes. Well, why haven't you presented it to me, or where is it, or I want to look at it? Because a lot of times the agent will just slide it in when it comes to offer time. That's what they do. Oh, well, when do you get buyer agency? Well, I get the buyer agency when I write the offer. And I'm like, well, that's wrong. That's wrong, right? Because you are tricking that client or that customer, because you don't represent them, into thinking that you do, and you don't. You do not legally represent them here in Maryland if you don't have a signed buyer agency agreement, right? So they slide it in at the offer. Well, we slide it in there when we get our offer. Well, that's a fine time to give somebody a choice to signing your representation agreement, right? So you should ask the question, in this state, I've never bought a house before. In this state, is it the law that in order for you to represent me, that I have to sign something? Yes. Can I see it? Let me see it. Before we go out looking at houses, let me see it.
Yes. We have Tane Chuang. How big?
Did you say the name right, Melissa?
I'm sorry. Let me just get to the question. How big of a real estate crash do you think the real estate market will have, if there is one at all? I'm a first-time home buyer and want to buy. I think he's saying Tom, but he means Todd. So what do you think, Todd? He's a first-time home buyer and wants to buy in Broward County, Florida. Obviously, that's not where we are. But how big of a real estate crash do you think we're going to have?
And Chris and I talked about that too.
Ooh.
So we did talk about that, and we do have. And guys, look, a lot of you think that I'm only about to crash, and and that other agents, or that I don't value other people's opinions, and I do, because I don't want to be right. I've said this the whole time.
I know.
It's not my goal to be right here. It's my goal to advise my buyers on what my professional opinions are, and I think we are in a huge bubble. And I think we're at the top of the bubble, or we were last year. And I think that we are seeing air come out of the bubble, but I still think that there's a lot more to go. But it's all, what is going to happen next, right? We also can't forget we have an election year coming up, guys. Come on, man. So a lot of this stuff has been sort of like insulated, right? I mean, we see still that, FHA coming out with things, 40-year mortgages to keep people in their homes, taking up to 30% of the loan balance and casting it into an interest-free loan, taking it out of the payments altogether and sticking it on the back. These are things that are happening. That was extended from 25 years that was available before to people in default, and now 25% of the loan balance is now up to 30% as of January. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now where this is being protected. So if you guys are out there saying, he's looking for a crash and it's not coming, don't be so sure on yourself, because you don't know what's coming. What you have to know is that houses went up 40% over the last 2 years, and that's not normal. You think that's normal? You think that's the new normal? Well, why isn't it going up another 20% this year? Why are sales down 30% in some markets and more than that in others, right? So you've got affordability issues. You've got, certain economic indicators out there that can go one way or another, right? And you have an overpriced housing market like we have never seen before. Now, you can sit there and say, well, house prices don't come down, but then you have to say they do come down, and they do come down from time to time. Yeah, maybe they're not as significant as what we saw in 2008, but if you look at the chart, it's, from year to year, prices go up, prices come down, they go up, they come down. They've never shot up like they have since the pandemic. So when we're looking at that, I think we're probably not at the bottom. Not saying that you have to time the bottom. And if you can afford a house and you like something, buy it. But for most people, that's not the case. Most people are struggling. These first-time buyers are struggling with affordability issues, and there's nothing in their price range. So they're looking at it going, okay, I can't afford a $450,000 or $500,000 entry home. And what's for $250,000 is not habitable. So we have to look at this and go, if this is the new norm, guys, and there won't be a correction, don't call it a crash, call it a correction. If this is a new norm, where do we go from here? Right? Do we think we're just going to see wage growth? We haven't seen it in a decade. We're going to see wage growth all of a sudden change to be, these struggling businesses are going to pay their people 15% more year over year? No, it's not going to happen. Affordability is coming down. So with that, will the home prices come down more, or are they going to just flatten out for the next 10 years? I mean, that no one knows. I'm not God. I'm not a psychic. I don't know these things. So when you're saying he's just crash related, no, it's just I'm looking at indicators going, this is not normal. Mm-hmm. So that has to correct, because something has to correct, something has to give. That's what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, Chris and I talked about this. He thinks there's going to be a correction. And in fact, it's going to be a good interview, guys. You're going to like it. It's not any particular narrative that, you want to say, well, it may not be for our audience 100%. I think it is for our audience 100%. I think it's for anybody to hear, because he talks about a couple great things. He talks about people wanting to have more side hustles, and they're hungry. They're entrepreneurs. They are realizing that our middle class is disappearing. You are either going more into a state of poverty or you are wealthy. So our middle class is being erased, and these Gen Zs and these early or younger millennials are realizing that sucks. Don't talk to me about a pension plan. That they don't even know what that is, right? That was my grandfather. And most pension plans are gone unless you're the government. I'm not knocking you if you are, but most pension plans from companies, private companies, they don't exist, right? So they put them in these 401ks, and they think that they're going to make a lot of money off of them. And they say you're going to get 5% a year on your money. And meanwhile, inflation is going to 7%, or whatever the real number is. Who knows what it is? And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm not making any money. Well, the younger generation is waking up, guys. They're waking up. Right? So what's happening, and we're seeing this, where millennials are starting their own thing. They're becoming independents. They are moonlighting, right? They are, doing a little bit extra for, they're keeping their job, but they get their side hustle going, right? And so I think we're going to see that, and Chris agrees to that as well. But the millennials are going, man, I'm not so sure about this. Not the millennials, the Gen Zs are saying, I'm not so sure about this home ownership thing. It may not be for me right now. I may not be having a family or kids until I'm in my 30s. So I don't know about whether I want to jump on board and be in debt and be stuck in a specific city for 7, 10, 15 years. Right? So what he's saying is that people should be buying investment properties. He only invests in 5 markets. It's going to be a great video. He shares a lot. He invests in 5 markets. He said there's like 325 markets in the United States. Maybe it was 345. I don't know, but he knows it very well. And he said he only invests in 5, and he buys houses where he can buy them still for $220,000, $230,000, because he knows they're going to appreciate. And he says too risky in these other areas where the median price is an entry level house for $450. Who in the world wants to do that and take a risk on a tank and losing everything that they have and being set back? So I think, our younger generation, they're going to be more aggressive, and it goes along with that Internet of Things conference that I've talked about a couple times. Yeah. Where, I went to this conference for BOMA, Building Owners and Managers Association, and it was called the Internet of Things in Nashville, Tennessee in 2017. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that they talked about is, and, they said within 10 years, is 2017, 2027, that, more than 50% of the workforce would be self-employed. And I think this is going in that direction, where people are like, you know what, I get my side hustle going. Maybe I'm limited in my job, And they're realizing that they're going to school, they're coming out of college with debt, and they can't get a job to pay off their college debt, their student loans.
Yeah.
And and very few employers are paying for their further education. Where my time, if you needed a master's degree, you got a job and your employer paid for it for you. Now you have to have it in some of these fields. So I think tradition is changing. We're going to see a lot of change. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if you said that our viewers may not necessarily think the same way that Chris does. I think it makes you think, though, sometimes when you're presented with new ideas that you're like, oh, that's something I didn't think of before. So I do want to touch on this really quickly, this comment here. Bear with me.
Melissa, a lot of people got upset when I was teasing you saying that you weren't going away next week with Joe and I. Man, you guys have some fans.
I appreciate the love, but you know what? I handle it a lot. And Todd and Joe really are both so great to me. So I know where you're coming from, but
they did not like that joking around.
I don't think they understand our kidding either.
Yeah, they did not like that one bit.
No, but we're all good here. We're lots of love here at Sachs Realty. So not any, underlying. I wasn't upset.
They said your body language. Man, you were angry. Look at Melissa. Her body language was really something.
We're just sometimes sarcastic with each other. But it's all good. It's all good.
You have some fans.
Oh, well.
I'm glad that you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You also have fans.
We're very thankful.
Yes, we are.
For our following. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But this was the comment that was basically saying, do your, right here, Sean D., make sure that, check on the history of the property. Always, always, always check the price sale history. Yeah. Something that was sold for $400,000 2 years ago can't be worth $700,000 now. Ask your agent for that history before making your offer.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that they won't get it. We've seen this craziness, but you're right. You should know what has been happening with the property. There's a lot of truth to this. Because, even on Zillow or Trulia, you will see when a property goes on the market, off the market, on the market, off the market. And you're thinking, why is it going, what is going on here, right? And so a lot of times, maybe they did improvements, so maybe it is worth it, right? Maybe it was distressed, but you're right. You have to look into the history. You just call them up and say, look, why are you so confident about that property? And it's been on the market for 180 days, but you haven't dropped the price. And a lot of times the agent will say, well, that's what the seller wants. It's like, well, that's pretty good. All right. Thanks for that.
Tom Kine, thank you so much. I know that Jeremy's working hard for you. So really like Jeremy as my agent. He's a go-getter.
Awesome.
Yes.
Tom, we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the super chat there. We appreciate you. We're glad that we're working with you, helping you to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excited.
For your purchase. Got a simple man here. Are lenders helping with point buy down at the moment? And does this make sense, or must one pay attention to the details of this type of assistance and not always accept the help?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay in my lane here and defer this. I appreciate your question, and maybe we can get one of our lenders to comment on it. But as far as, what lenders are offering what, I know, a lot's changed since the Dodd-Frank Act. Things were crazy back in the subprime and actually there is still subprime going on. There are different loan products out there, but when we had, the 2006 was really crazy times when, there were no doc loans and no employment verification. And I think actually there may be a product or two out there like that now. But it was really crazy. And I think the biggest thing were a lot of these lenders, they didn't have to be licensed. So the loan officers didn't have, the lenders did, but the loan officers didn't have to be licensed. Mm-hmm. So a lot changed. And I think they kind of leveled the playing field and said, look, you guys all have to be in your lane as far as charging the same kind of things, but maybe they can offer some discounts and give up their commission. I don't know. I don't know how that works in that. But good question.
Mm-hmm. How about this one? We've got SG. As a buyer, what fees do I need to pay to my agent?
Yeah, so this is going to be brokerage specific again. I mean, we don't really dive into what the agents charge because everything's negotiable. At least here, everything's negotiable. And but I know with us, we have different types of structures, but for the buyer, we cooperate. And most agents cooperate with the commission side of things, but whether there's a flat fee or something like that they charge, that a brokerage charges. But even on the listing side, I mean, everything's negotiable. So one of the things that we learn in school, and you shouldn't be hearing from anybody, is it's the going rate. We're not allowed to say that. No one should be telling you that it's a going rate, right? That's almost alluding to there's a fixed price, and that's not true. Ask those questions. If somebody's saying that to you, the going rate, that's bad.
Yes. And this is just a comment coming in.
Good questions.
Good questions. Yeah. Randy D was a little shocked when I looked at my house on Zillow and it just hit a new all-time high. I thought mortgage rates would have dampened demand.
Yeah, where do you live? I mean, we'd like to know that. I mean, we've certain parts of the country, and Zillow, by the way, is an algorithm, and they're not going inside your house. They don't know what it looks like inside unless it recently sold and they're looking at pictures. But the Zillow system broke, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things that they talked about was the Zestimate was broken, and I remember when Zillow came out. I remember when Zestimate came out. And, I think everything is algorithm based. I think AI is going to get insane. It's going to get crazy. And, blockchain technology, I think, is going to creep into the real estate industry, affect title and the way that title companies operate and do abstract work and things like that. So there's a lot of things that are happening when we're talking about, algorithms and AI driven data. But you can't go with that. I've had listings that I put on the market that I've sold for a price that Zillow said maybe it was broken. They're like, oh, sorry, they have the little robot and it looks confused and broken. We're like, we don't really know what this property is worth. So they're broken.
Yes. Get Darren Buttery here with a comment. Renters Nation is where we are heading until we get builders to build smaller starter homes, not just the McMansions, and incentivize current homeowners to give up their 3% rates. We are in a pickle.
Yeah, sellers don't want to give. They have refinanced. They have these cheap mortgages, and they're like, man, I bought my house 10 years ago. I financed. I'm at 3.5%. Refinanced. I'm at 3.5%. I have so much equity in my house. And I don't want to sell it.
Yep. Because,
I'm going to pay a lot more for something and get a lot less. And look, I mean, I had this conversation with somebody. Sometimes, we have to, not sometimes, always I try and give my best advice, even when it talks me out of a sale. And if you're a client of mine, you know that I've done this on occasion, probably even with you. And the last house I sold, I said, why are you selling? Why don't you keep it? But I had somebody that called me up last week and they're like, hey, I want to talk to you about this house, and this is what I owe on it. And what I bought it for. And, we're thinking about selling it. And I went, I mean, they're literally in $120,000 on a house that's probably worth at least $350,000. If not more. You could never buy that house for $120,000. I'm like, keep it.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of it.
Yeah. I had a call actually into the office today from one of our viewers, and they're looking at potentially listing and needed some, it's out of state, and they needed some guidance on realtor connections for broker network that we have. But she was just like, I don't know if I want to sell or if because they have the low rate or if they wanted to keep it and rent. She's like, but then there's so many extra costs when you are a landlord. And she had never been a landlord before. She wasn't really prepared for that. She's weighing her options. She needs to talk to a professional in her area.
Hey, Joe, can we, can we sneak in a snapshot of our website? That's
Yeah.
and
That'd be cool.
kind of like, is there a way to mask the URL? We don't want people to hit it. Maybe just take a screenshot of it or something. And, it's on a development server right now. But guys, we are really, really, really excited. It's taken a while. Our website's terrible. It sucks. Don't get me started, right? But anyway, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we'll save the intro video, but if we could just kind of show like a snapshot of the map of the U.S. or just kind of like scroll down through it or something. Guys, what we're getting at here is we have a broker network all over the country, and we have people. We stopped saying it on our videos. If you've been following us, you haven't heard me say it in a while about our broker network because we were getting so pounded. We love you guys and appreciate you so much, but we were getting completely pounded by, hey, I need an agent here, I need an agent there. And it was like we couldn't even keep up. Mm-hmm. And so what we did, guys, is we have this new website. It is going to be so cool. It's so interactive. It's click maps and, kind of easy to find things. But if you're not in Maryland, this is the coolest part. Is we're going to put our agent network on this map, and you literally just hover over your state. You click the state, you'll be able to be connected to in a city order what agents we have in our network. And if you guys are an agent, you'd like to talk about being in our network, we do interview you. We want to make sure that it's a good fit. At least it aligns well. And here we go, right? Well, not everybody aligns with what you think, Todd, right? But guys, our followers want to be aligned with the way that we think, okay? Mm-hmm. So not that our way is always right, but I'm talking about the way that we think as far as the way an agent should be, right? As far as professional and, have experience and have, decent reviews and things that we care about, right? So we want to make sure that we're aligning. We don't want just anybody on the site because this is our audience, our following. But we also will have a lot of free resources, free downloads, checklist, interview questions for your agents just to keep you intrigued. It's a way for you to sign up for our monthly newsletter. We will never sell our people on our database to third party, things like that. When you connect with an agent, that is a connection between you and that agent. We're not going to sell your information for leads and things like that. It's just not our intention. So it's gonna be I'm excited.
Oh, I'm excited.
How are we doing on time? What do we got?
We've got 9:32.
Yeah, so we'll take some more questions. As long as you guys are interested in continuing to hang out with us tonight, we will keep it going.
So we have Jordan Bressler talks about tax assessment. Is the tax assessment supposed to be doubled or tripled to get to the actual value?
Every place is different with the rates that they use. I find a lot of times, and you have to look at what the structure is, and the land. So, the land value, the tax value of, both of those things, and they're going to come up with a tax assessed value. I think a lot of it, what I see is somewhere about 70% is what, a lot when I'm looking at the tax record and what the property is actually could sell for. We always think it's a really good deal if you can buy it at tax assessed value, at least here, because we know it's low, right? We know it's a number that is very conservative, unless it just sold, and then there's going to be some kind of a phased in value process that over the next several years, your value is going to get phased in, to be a higher tax value. But we have what's called a homestead, credit or Homestead Act, which means if it's your primary residence, you're kind of capped on what your taxes can go up. Now, the big thing here, guys, is that, when you're looking at a property, let's give an example. And Jordan, we always appreciate you, man. You give a lot of great input and, comments. And so we love the fact that you're, asking this question. It's not double or triple. My experience is, it's somewhere about 30%. From my experience looking at the value of the tax value versus what the property should be able to get on the market. And again, it depends on when it was assessed. It depends on if there's improvements that they don't know about. What makes the tax value go up is when permits are pulled. So, and a lot of people don't pull permits because of that. They don't want their taxes to go up, because when you pull a permit for a major construction project, or you're adding an addition or putting, more bathrooms in and things like that, what happens is you have to put a value on, at least here, you have to put a value on your improvement. So you can't build an addition for $10. You have to, put an actual value of what you're improving it. And then usually the tax assessor is going to show up, usually somewhere around the end of your project or the end of when you get a final, and they're going to want to see it. And a lot of people are like, Nate, it's shot. We're not, there's no way that we're going to let you in to see this. So they guess. And, so what happens is, depending on when that property was updated, did it have, permits on the renovations that were made, and then what's the recent sale value? So if you're buying it, you've got to be careful, because if you're buying a house that's actually listed for, let's say, $500,000, but the tax assessment is $350, you have to know, if you close at $500,000, you're getting a tax hike, right? Because you just gave them a new number to work within. And so what happened was the tax assessments came out recently, and so we just got pounded on by phone calls and emails saying, should I rebuttal this? Should I take this to a hearing and see about getting it reduced? And it's really not easy to do. Back in 2008, what happened was there were actually service providers that were saying, look, we'll do this for free, for you to drop your tax rate down. And then we get a percentage of what we save you. Maybe it's what we save you in 1 year. That's our fee. And then you're going to get it for year over year. So we actually saw jobs that weren't even thought of come into play when people were like, hey, I'll fight this tax assessment for you because your neighbor's house was selling for $200,000 less than what you were assessed for, because we had, so many foreclosures and things. And so they were getting them. They were very successful. But in this climate, it's kind of hard to go in and say, hey, this is too high. And they're looking at it going, yeah, but it's 20% less than what you paid, or 30% less still what, So good luck. You have to give a real good fight. You have to show where the assessor made a mistake.
And we just had MH08 make a comment here. Colorado just got nailed on property taxes thanks to the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment, and his went up 41%. Mine went up 41%. It's huge.
Big business.
Wow.
Big business.
Yeah.
I mean, you sit there and you say, well, why would we allow housing to get so expensive? At what point should the Fed have raised the rate? A year sooner, at least.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I understand why they did it, right? To stimulate the economy. But the economy was pretty stimulated.
It was very stimulating.
I mean, it's like, they were printing money, PPP money, craziness. And, so as a result, they let these values go. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea now that we have all this crazy inflation and things are out of whack. Maybe that's bad. Come on. How much money is made? When product goods and services go up, their taxes are going up. If your sales tax is 8%, and you get a 30% increase in goods cost prices, they get a nice hike, right? 8% of that 30% is going to more taxes. So when we see wealth being gathered, and that's the big thing when we talk about the middle class, when we see wealth, we see really wealthy people. They're not really affected by recessions. They're not affected by inflation. They're not affected by downturns because they have so much money that their life is never going to change no matter what. And for a lot of these people, they have businesses. So if they just pay more, they pay less taxes. So what it's really affecting is our middle class. We're going to come up with ways of saving, the people that are moving towards poverty because we have to. We got to subsidize, right? We've got to make sure that they aren't burdens. We've got to make sure that things are, we don't want to see them on the streets. But what happens in the middle class is you're depleted. Your cash is depleted, and you're really affected by, inflation and interest rates and things like that. So it's really impacting you. And so what we're doing is we're taking a bulk of the population and we're making you pay more. And as a result, there's a lot of wealth, going on as a result of that. Mm-hmm. A lot of capitalization on that. On those increases.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Jesse, you are asking, looking in the Chesapeake Beach, North Beach area of Maryland, can we use you as an agent? Still undecided on Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in Maryland, we would love
are
to
here to
talk
help.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yep. And then Todd, how do you feel about talking about Dallas? We had a question.
I just sold a house, by the way, in Lusby that is, very close to Chesapeake Beach. I passed Chesapeake Beach.
Yes. So please.
It's a great area. It's a great area. A lot of people from DC are moving, to these areas.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, a lot of water. Beautiful property. A lot of wooded areas, just private. A lot of new stuff. A lot of new development, new stores, new shopping. Yeah, it's great.
Joe, do you want to pop up? Let me take this down real quick. Do you want to put up the email that they can reach out? You always are welcome to call the office, but Joe's going to put up the email too, so you can reach out and we'll chat. But I'm going to have a question here about Dallas. I don't know how you feel about talking about this, Todd, but you mentioned in one of your videos that Dallas, Texas has room for growth. Do you think it is a good time to buy a house in Dallas now, or will there be a crash?
Yeah, in fact, I'm actually working with somebody that's looking in the area of Stonewall. There's a big lake there in Stonewall, mm-hmm. and looking at houses right around 300,000. So, I think I think there is room for growth. A lot of people, depending on where you are, even as you get into Fort Worth. Arlington Heights, downtown Fort Worth, very expensive. But as you go into more of the suburbs, actually, I like the Dallas market a lot. I think it's one of those areas, and people will say that, yes, houses are less expensive, but so are salaries. That's not really true. You've got some great employers in Dallas. I mean, Lockheed Martin right there is amazing, right? I mean, they're hiring, people are making decent money, right? And so I think, and there's a lot of companies, really it's a great area. It's building up. So I do think that there is room for growth, but like anything, you have to be careful. You have to look at these pockets, these suburbs, and, really kind of focus in on those areas if you want to see growth, right? Like I said, I mean, some areas, if you're downtown Fort Worth or downtown Dallas, is very expensive, right? But you need to expect that depending on how far you work, traffic can be an issue. But guys, I mean, we have to get back to the fact that we may be driving 45 minutes to work. If, we can get a house that we can afford and where we can get some price appreciation, and be able to actually sell and get out if you need to, if you're in a jam. When you're overpaying, a lot of these people are so cash strapped that should something financially happen,
right?
They're one step away from, or one paycheck away from,
or one event
away from, losing their house.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Agreed. How about going back on the assessed value? Let's have this question from David Kaplan. Can you please fully explain the assessed value versus the list price and how apart both those should be from each other?
Yeah, well, there's a certain percentage that the county, wherever you are, the city or county or whatever, there is a certain percentage that county or city has based on what they think your property value is, that they will tax you on that rate, right? That assessed rate. And, and it does differ depending on where you are, what county and city and what state. So, that really is very specific to that local government on what that tax rate is. But again, when we're dealing with tax assessed values, the properties that have not been sold in years, 10 or 15 years, you will see where they are assessed really low, unless there's been major improvements, like I said, where there's been renovations, because they figure that the property is probably in fair condition, not new or great condition. So, a lot of that, is in the hands of the assessor. Mm-hmm. And they do try and, stay up on that. That is an actual job, a tax assessor, property tax assessor. So, and you have one in your area and they're paying attention.
Yes. Charlton has another question. Can the seller and buyer split the agent's fee, and does this obligate the agent to be honest?
Can the seller and buyer split the agent's fee? So in our state, if I'm the listing agent and the buyer is represented, we already are splitting the fee. There's a cooperating percentage of what we agree, and a lot of people don't realize that. If they call up and say, really, the seller's only offering this amount of money or whatever. I mean, guys, at least in Maryland here, it's not up to the seller. It's the relationship between the negotiation between the seller and the broker, the listing broker, as to what the fee will be, because it's negotiable. And then it's up to between the seller and the broker, the listing broker, to determine what they're going to cooperate with a buyer's agent. So it really, I'd say, Charlton, in this situation that you're asking, it's a great question. I don't think that this obligates an agent to be honest or dishonest, because that's personal. That's a personal standard of whether somebody is honest or dishonest. So I think that they should care first about their license, because if they're dishonest, I mean, this brings me to a thought here. I had a friend that he still owns restaurants, but anyway, me and another buddy, we were eating at his restaurant, and we're sitting down and talking, and I said, man, everybody here is so nice. What's the secret? And he said, Todd, it's not a matter of hiring just anybody and asking them to be nice. I hire nice people, right? So the same goes with this. I mean, you could have governing laws, requirements and things like that. That doesn't mean that someone is going to be honest, right? They have to have a conscience. They have to be able to truly put their clients' needs in front of theirs. Very important, right? And so to truly have a fiduciary relationship. So I don't think it has anything to do with the money that's involved, or the fact that one broker is splitting or fee sharing to the other side. I think it just comes down to the moral and ethics of the people that are involved. And look, I mean, guys, if you're an agent listening and your client is asking you to bury something under the rug or kind of hide something, run.
Yeah.
You better. Or you better disclose it.
Right.
Hey, you shouldn't have told me that. That's something that we need to disclose. And here's the thing, and I've had this, so like, you got to be kidding me. You're my agent. I'm telling you this in confidence. Well, you just told me something that is not allowed to be in confidence, right? you had an oil spill in your backyard and you just covered it up, right? You didn't take, I mean, that's not a matter of being faithful to you as a seller. I'm going to save you a freaking ton of hassle and aggravation by telling you clean it up, right? And if you don't, it's going to come back to you and you're going to get sued. And you're going to say, well, my agent knew about it. My agent knew about it. I told him and he didn't say anything about it.
All right. So you guys have asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's
tonight.
great. Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Guys, we appreciate you.
Yes. So appreciate you. So Jordan does have a question here, and I don't even know. We're not lenders, but what's the ratio they are lending at now? 3 times the annual income? Do you know the answer to that, Todd?
Yeah, I'm losing my voice.
Oh, it's been a lot of talking.
You know, and I think, excuse me, I think it's, today we had a lot of pollen. Did you think we had a lot of pollen?
It's been
almost
very,
like smog.
The past couple days, it's been a little rough.
It's like driving down the road and I was choking.
It's like it's
like crazy.
green cloud.
Yeah. You know, Jordan, everybody, you know, the debt to income ratios, depending on the loan product, you know, and I'm not a lender, but I do know that there are products out there. There are still subprime type lenders out there. I mean, what were we? We were somewhere and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do a loan up to 60% or something. That was like crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, what?
Yeah.
Seriously? He's like, oh yeah, we can get it done.
Yes.
Up to 60% debt to income ratio. You know, so I think, you know, it's not just their annual income, but it's what do they have in bills, right? Revolving credit, auto loans, things like that. That takes their debt to income ratio down. But yes, as a rule of thumb, especially when you're talking about like rentals, we want the housing expense to be, you know, at least, you know, or their income to be at least 3 times their monthly rent, right? But there are other things that we know come into play with ownership. You know, are there HOAs fees? Are there condominium fees that are going to extra charges that, you know, are there assessments that are still hanging out there that the, you know, water front foot fees that need to be added into the cost? Is there ground rent? And here in Maryland, you know, we're still dealing with ground rent on a lot of properties in Baltimore. And that, you know, back in the day, they would sell you the house, but hold the land and you would pay a fee. It was a way of keeping the purchase price down because you didn't actually buy the land, you leased the land. So all these things kind of go into play and, you know, how much debt you have. One of the worst things you want to do when you're buying a house is go out and buy a brand new car, especially after you're qualified at a certain, you know, debt to income ratio.
Correct. Yep. All right.
All right, guys. Well, we thank you. Does that wrap us up?
Well, let's do one more.
All right.
So we've got Anthony. Is it a good idea to buy a vacation property near Disney World, Florida as partially a residence and future investment?
Yeah, so that's an accountant question because I know a lot of people that want to do these short-term rentals and they want to kind of live there. Is it going to be your primary residence? I mean, that's an accounting question. But I will tell you that this is a hot area. And actually, Chris Crone, in our interview today, you know, he said that he loves this area in Florida, like Orlando, kind of, you know, and I've had my eyes on like Doc Phillips and, you know, that whole area. But, you know, he looks for like macro type of, you know, I can't even talk, but sort of like macro elements, like what's happening with job growth, you know, industry, you know, vacations, you know, is it a good vacation spot? You know, what's the purchase price and, you know, what's that area slated to do over the next several years? But Disney's kind of like, you know, one of those things where it's a destination spot, right? So I think if you can get a decent place, I wouldn't be afraid to invest. And also Universal, I think, is another one that's there. And, or I don't know if it's called Universal, whatever that.
There's a few parks there.
There's a few parks, right?
Yep.
But I think the important thing here is check with your accountant because, you know, what you're listing as your primary residence. And if it's a vacation rental, I think there are limitations on how much time you can be there. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys, my voice is on its way out, and we appreciate you. We love having you watch our show. Thanks so much. If you liked tonight and you got some good value, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and let Melissa and I know that you did. And if you haven't already subscribed, you can do so now. Smash that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content.
So thankful for the comments and questions tonight, guys. And we will be doing our weekly video of weekly questions that come in that we think is going to be, bringing you the information and getting those questions answered.
Yep. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you.
See you next time.
See you next time.